everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Coreco Couch. Now, this week we're going to be talking about all things buy-to-let, investment, specialist finance, Renters' Rights Act, all of those things. So we need a particular expert who can help, and I'm delighted to welcome none other than Adrian Moloney, who is, and I'm going to read your title, the Group Lending Distribution Director of OSB Group. Welcome.
Well done. You've got that in one sentence. Thanks, Monty. It's not an easy one, is it?
I have already redone that, by the way. That's the second time I got it right. But there you go. It's been a day of mishaps. But your title is very much... You sound like a king there, Adrian.
Well, yours isn't too bad either, really. And, Coreco comes with an air of royalty as well. So
thank you very much, yeah. But I have messed up today, so I have spilt coffee down my pristine white shirt. So hopefully it doesn't come up. But anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
So... your title is very lofty because you are very lofty. Do you want to just give us a sense of what you do day to day? But mainly because I don't know.
Yeah. I have the pleasure. OSB Group it comprises of a group of, I guess, savings brand and lending brands. So in terms of we deal through intermediaries and brokers. So I have the pleasure of heading up our recently launched Rely brand, which does buy-to-let. Also Precise Mortgages, which we do our residential offering and our bridging offering through, and Interbay Commercial, which is for those commercial borrowers that might want to do, a loan on their shop, or they want to do, an office, which they base their business out. So a wide spectrum of things, and we probably cover most of the things that people would associate, I think, with specialist lending, which I'm sure we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and Adrian also had the privilege of doing my first personal mortgage.
I did all those years ago at another big London brokerage, which we worked through at the time. So yeah.
Yeah. So welcome. So I want to get a sense at the moment of where you think landlords find themselves in this world and the economic environment at the moment. What's your sense of the market going into? Well, we're going into Q2 at the moment of 2026, but how does it look from your perspective?
I joined this business 10 years ago. It's 11 this year, and it must be a bit. I must be a bit of a Jonah because everything changed the minute I come in. So about 10 years ago, of course, you had the tax changes, which saw, a real drive to limit companies for portfolio landlords. There was an additional. And as brokers, you'll know, dealing with landlords that have large portfolios, which is 3 or more mortgage properties, is that there's an additional underwriting requirements that go there. You've of course had the Renters' Rights Act come in recently, and of course they've gone through, I guess, a raft of changes with macro stuff that's happened in the UK. But it's still a resilient sector. 1 in 5 houses is owned within the private rental sector, and 50% of landlords actually own their properties outright. So we've still seen a real big demand. As I said, we launched our Rely brand last year. Rates, I think, have been relatively competitive, and of course, you've got a number of landlords rolling off rates needing refinance this year. I guess the minefield for them is stick, twist. Particularly over the last few weeks as we record this on the back of what's gone on in the Gulf. But I think, we still see landlords investing, buying. We still see landlords refinancing, raising capital, looking for opportunities. The whole mortgage market is built around confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say, probably landlords, some of them have had their confidence bashed, and probably the entry point for those thinking, shall I enter into the market, is a lot harder than it would have been 10 years ago.
So you seeing that change? There's a lot being spoken about of what we used to call them, the dinner party buy-to-let landlords, the amateur landlords. Are they the ones who are selling, and the professional ones are a bit more canny, and actually they think 2026 and beyond could actually be good?
I think, you don't see everyone selling up. I guess there's that misconception depending on what newspaper you read and what the newspaper wants to tell you about the market. And obviously, we see a lot of young landlords still come into it, people that perhaps have got, good income coming in. They see property as a longer term investment. They want to hold that. And of course, you've got those established ones that you've mentioned there. But yeah, I think it's definitely geared towards people running it much more as a business. And of course, they look at the other opportunities. We've seen a growth in people want to invest in HMOs, MUBs, multi-unit blocks, where the returns by having multiple
Yeah.
sources of rental coming in are, of course, greater. And, I'm a victim of it as well, as I'm sure many of your viewers are, in the amount of people going into further education, into university, and the opportunity with renting for students as
Yeah.
well as professionals
Yeah.
now. So I think there's still a broad spectrum. There's still good opportunities. There's plenty of choice in terms of rates, fee structures, products out there. So I think, if people do their research properly, if they get the right financial advice and they're keen to make the right decision, there's still people coming into the market. There's still professionals looking to grow. But yeah, you probably have seen some of those people that did a let to buy 5 years ago think, it's in my personal name. Is it worth the hassle going forward with all of these changes?
So that personal name piece is interesting because that's obviously with the tax changes that came in, that's one of the biggest changes we've probably seen. Where are you seeing it as well, where most of the new borrowing is done through a limited company, or are there still quite a few people looking at it in personal names?
I guess you probably see some of the more high street lenders would see a bigger shift or a bigger amount of stuff being done in an individual's name. As a specialist from 10 years ago, we always targeted that limited company market.
Yeah.
We always had knowledge about how to do it, made the process, I think, relatively straightforward. But I think certainly you even see the stats now. Limited companies have grown phenomenally, and there's much more choice for the landlord that wants to invest in it. And I guess some of the lenders that are owned by the big high street banks that do buy to let, they wouldn't have come into that market if they didn't see the opportunity.
It is really interesting at the moment because it feels like, I've read this so many times. Is this a death of the landlord and the whole sector is problematic? And do you think that regulators and government really understand just how important the private rental sector is? Because as everyone's on about, and rightly, about first time buyers and we've got to buy, etc., etc. But owning a home doesn't suit everyone, does it? And actually you need that rental sector.
You want every part of the market firing.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to that bit about confidence. If landlords don't invest, how many people can get onto the housing ladder? There are higher LTVs. Obviously, we're in a time where probably the market is a little less certain than it might have been 12 months ago. But the regulate. Not all regulation is bad, and regulation is put there actually to protect the longevity of the sector. And I think you saw through those PRA changes that landlords adjusted. They're able to prove that their background portfolio support has actually made the buy-to-let sector, in the event of a downturn, more strong. It's made it stronger and actually perform better. So that bit's there. I guess the bit is they get some bad PR, landlords, and it depends what newspaper you read. Certainly the last two governments, because of course the Renters' Right Act started under the previous government, was implemented by this government. That's there to protect tenants, to be more beneficial to tenants. And actually that's not a bad thing either. But much is made about how difficult it is for the landlord that supplies the home from. But you go back to that number, 20% of the UK is made up of the private rental sector. That's an important part of the housing market.
That is. And that Renters' Rights Act that's sort of mooted now, should I say, as the straw that is going to break the camel's back in the market. But I'm not really seeing that, especially from the professional landlords. They seem to have taken it in its stride. And they're going back to your point. You said actually it's there to protect the tenants, obviously. But landlords can still operate. And there's confusion about things like ending fixed term tenancies, and obviously the no fault eviction, Section 21 that's a big part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, but I guess the bit there is, and I guess the bit is, you become more selective about your tenancies and people that you come in, and maybe that's not such a good thing for some people. You've got to work through an agent. I mean, it's great news for pets, because they can't.
It's really good news for pets.
Discriminate against.
As a new owner of 2 pussycats.
If ever you have to move into a rental property, they're happy to come with you. But it's about, how do I want my the ability to make a property look like you want it to do yourself from the tenant. Most landlords that you see these days are good landlords. I guess it's there to iron out the crinkles that aren't there. But there have been plenty. The rules have been out there. There have been plenty of of signs as to where it was going. It's come in, and again, I think like all of these things, the landlords that you see that run these as professional businesses have adapted and got ready for these changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact it's nice on pets
Yeah,
as well. I think pets have had a hard
Pets
in
at
the
home.
rental
Should I
se-
say that?
Pets at home. Isn't that a brand?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to edit that out. But there you go.
That's okay. So yeah, you mentioned that landlords were diversifying into different things. So houses of multiple occupation, HMOs, multi-unit blocks, and are you also seeing that geographical changes? Because obviously, London rents are very strong,
Yeah.
but the rental yields are sometimes pretty low compared to the value of the property. So are you seeing a regional split in all of
Do you know,
this?
every time you get asked this question, is there a great flight of landlords that perhaps are based in London investing
Yeah.
in the north or in cities in the Midlands? I think it's a split. A lot of people, I see landlords that've got their model based in southwest London. They've had it for 20 years. They know their market. They know their stuff there. They continue to grow and pick the opportunities there. They don't necessarily take that flight to chase yield up north because they have an established business model. I guess you do see the flip side where people go, actually, I use where my son is. They see a university town like Nottingham.
Yeah.
Obviously, HMOs, opportunities with students. Something comes up there, they
Yeah.
want to buy it. So I think it's a real mixed bag depending on what someone's model is really, and what they want to get out of their buy to let. As you say, the yields are probably less in London, but the capital growth historically has been better. So, for those people that have probably been in buy to let, and it can be anything from 5, 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of those guys, and ladies obviously as well, have seen a massive amount of growth in terms of the equity they have within their properties.
Are you seeing, because as one of the leading lenders in this field, obviously you've got a great suite of products, loads of different things, but are you seeing innovations start to come back into your market, or is it pretty constrained, or have you got some interesting product?
Do you know people throw the word innovation around?
Well, I know it's quite a lazy word sometimes.
Have we seen
isn't
innovation since the 5-year fixed rate was introduced?
No,
all those years ago?
not at all.
Maybe not. I guess there's more choice in terms of. I don't think it's innovation. It's about adapting to market needs. So you've seen when.
Oh, I like that. That's good. I like that.
When you see, I don't know how it came up. When you,
that's really good.
When you see when I guess rates are higher, fees tend to go up, and that brings down the pay rate to help absorb some of the bit. It's not innovation; it's just moving of the products around. I guess you see some lenders that use the ability for people to use personal income to support their portfolio, or if people have got a large portfolio, the ability to, I guess, cross-charge that and use the different rentals across those. None of those are, I guess, I wouldn't say innovative. Creative is probably a little bit more, but I think there's plenty of solutions out there, and I guess that's why, we still see a buy-to-let market thrive. It was up last year. It will probably be bigger again this year, Monty, in terms of lending. But, I guess most people, if they were looking at innovation, it's how do we make the journey easier? We launched our new brand last year, Rely. It was about making the journey for both the broker and the end borrower smoother, quicker, faster, the product's more accessible, and I guess the decisions quicker. Is that innovation, or is that just the natural flight of the market? It's probably the natural flight of the market.
And a lot of those innovative products. I actually said the word innovative. Innovative. I couldn't say it last time.
One of them's right.
I had this discussion on the last one. Anyway, I'm not going to go back to that. It's looking at lessons from the past, really, because a lot of these products and ways of doing things were around previously, and then I guess in the rush to regulation, the pendulum swung probably a bit too far the other way.
Yeah, I guess for lenders as well now, they have everyone uses the data word, but there is a lot more data that sits behind it. You are able to look at how books performed previously and how they perhaps have a forward looking on how they would perform if interest rates went up or if X or Y happens. So, lenders have the confidence to be able to make those decisions and backed up by data that sort of powers that.
And the other big thing in the industry is around green and EPCs, energy performance certificates and all of that. are landlords getting to grips with what that actually means around how they're going to need to see their? Are you seeing people come back and raising money to actually do up their properties, or?
Yeah, you do, but I don't think any sort of lenders nailed it because the rules have only really started to be clarified in the
Yeah,
timeline this year. But it is coming. It is going
yeah,
to happen. I guess the biggest bit that we see is, and we see it across commercial and buy to let, is when people are purchasing potentially, they're looking at that EPC A to C already, Monty.
yeah,
I guess the other bit that's there is for existing landlords is what if any of the exemptions gonna be? I use the example, and probably for viewers to make it familiar. I often wonder, will we see Coronation Street with a load of solar panels, triple glazing, and an air source
yeah. Well,
heaters
you should do.
outside it
Yeah,
at some stage,
yeah,
or will those properties be exempt? And I guess that's the big challenge for landlords. But it's happening. It's coming soon. And as I said, some people have started the work. Others, I guess, will have taken their time and, if you're a betting person, hedge their bets.
yeah. So the other thing that I know you guys do, which you do well, we see landlords who get to a certain stage. Usually they got a decent portfolio, and then they start to go into the grey area, area of specialist and commercial. Are you seeing a lot of landlords do that, where they're starting to go into, maybe it's developing their own stuff, building their own stuff, all of that?
Yeah, I think it's they called it the grey area, the commercial market. I mean, we really focus on the commercial assets rather than some of the bits that's there. We've got a lot of landlords that have seen the opportunity in there.
Yeah.
The returns. A lot of landlords that have their own office space. Rates are competitive. The
Yeah.
ability to do interest only on those assets and using that to gain cash, or people that actually see semi-commercial is really big. I can go out and see a row of shops with 5 flats above it. I've got the best of both opportunities there. And I think over recent years, as more lenders such as ourselves have, post-COVID, when the world opened up and trade opened up, go back into that and go, where are the opportunities? The other bit that you get is, you see a lot of businesses, probably things like warehouse storage, where I guess with everything from deliveries going out, people ordering online, these sort of things, real opportunities in there. So yeah, I think the commercial market has grown.
So yeah, following on from that, what do you think is the opportunity in the size, almost like the size of the market, commercial wise?
Can I throw a question back at you?
Yeah, always.
So what percentage, if you looked at Coreco's client bank, is self-employed?
That's a really good question. We've actually got probably quite a high percentage. It's probably a good 40%, actually, 30-40%.
You've got 40% of people within, and it's a big broking business that potentially have the opportunity to commercial. They might own their own premises, they might own, and you could even go as far as asset finance and things like that. So nobody gauges the size of the commercial market. It's not like the UK mortgage market where you get the things. But certainly, we've seen demand for it over recent years definitely grow, and I think it kind of sits behind, because most people think of their own residential mortgage. They don't think, quite often they don't think actually there's an opportunity to look at my commercial mortgage through a specialist lender that perhaps doesn't sit with, it's not their business bank, for example.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That whole world is so, I call it the weird and wonderful.
Yeah.
My colleague Julian, who you well know, another king,
he's definitely a king,
a legend in this industry. He covers all of that stuff, and I know he does a lot with you guys. But it's really trying to ascertain exactly where it fits. And I guess if someone's at home thinking about, actually, how do I do this property, that property?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at things about the trading period people have. So there's opportunities within commercial bridging as well. So if you're buying an asset and it hasn't got those trading figures for 12 months, you want to put business in there, you're able to bridge it or short-term lend it and then go into a term loan. And I think just people seeing the opportunity in the commercial market, you only have to look at the number of, I guess, specialist lenders that have evolved out of buy-to-let lenders, particularly over the last 12 months, looking at trying to give more opportunity in that space.
And that's where that manual underwriting really comes into play, doesn't it? But we are seeing tech, AI, all of that stuff come in. Is that affecting you guys in this specialist world, or will that be a little bit slower, do you think?
I think, that we're certainly investing in platforms. As I talked to you earlier, our Rely brand is based around using more tech than our previous brands were, which everything had to be manually written. If you get the tech right, it frees up the underwriters to underwrite what they need to. I think commercial is a whole different ball game. Will it get there? I'm sure it will. And we as a business will use the tech to improve that journey. But yeah, it does need that skill set of someone to look at the bigger deal, particularly if you sit on the specialist side of it. You're not doing the business banking for the borrower, but you're looking at lending against the asset class. It's really about understanding their needs. You called it grey. That's absolutely right, because I don't think any deal that comes in fits the black and white of the policy.
Yeah. Is that what you see sort of our role then as a broker? In terms of educator, you're going to say something funny there, aren't you?
No. You carry on.
There's a little smirk on your face. I don't know what I was going to say now, Adrian. It's sort of the role of the broker in terms of educating people a bit more, because I'm sure there are people at home who are either unsure about how to do it, what to do, who to contact, or speech broker. Do I go direct to a lender? Do you think we're actually educating enough out there in this arena?
I think I called the brokers the fourth emergency service while all these rates have been going on.
Oh, you did, yeah.
Yeah, and I look. I mean, we're talking specialist lending today, and the vast majority of buy-to-let goes through the intermediary channel. So if you part that, that's grown phenomenally. Commercial and bridging, in terms of that, you do need a broker to guide you through it. And you'll probably find that most of the specialist lenders that sit in that space, they'll only deal with through the intermediary channel. Certainly that's where we see it. That's where we've positioned ourselves, because it is complex. It does take time. And actually, it's not for every broker, but you do need the specialists that work in that sector, because it's very, very different to a mainstream residential mortgage.
Yeah, very different. More entertaining.
At times,
fun.
Yeah.
At times.
Yeah.
We've had our moments.
We have. Big moments, but they've worked.
They have worked. So if you're speaking to someone out there, what you mentioned before, it depends what newspaper you read or where you're getting your news as to what the view of the market is. Are there any sort of myths in this area that you'd like to bust?
Look, I don't think it's all doom and gloom, right? People will always want to buy property. People will want to rent property. There's plenty of choice. I guess, the bit, and we've both lived through a number of moments in this market. We must have sinned in a previous life. You don't sit there and, we've seen the recent volatility because of the war. You don't go back and sit this in another 2008, 2009 again. You probably go, actually, there's moments of it that are more akin to the trust budget, but it hasn't been as bad as that. People still need to make decisions. They need to make the right decisions. And they probably do need advice, more so than ever. Rates come and go quickly. Rates are still reasonably good in and for a functioning market. But you want to have access to choice, and you want to go, I always think a bit when we talked about AI and how perhaps that will evolve, or the evolution of how mortgage broking or getting a mortgage happens. I still think people at the end, the vast majority of people at the end, before they even press the button, will still go, this is a big decision. Am I making the right choice? And I do think with the amount of brokers out there, the products they've got access to, utilise the help that's there, really. In terms of refinance, you're probably going to see record numbers of people rolling off rates this year. If it was 5 years ago, it's going to go up. If it was 2 years ago, probably actually you might save a bit of money. So it's a mixed bag, isn't it? Yeah,
it is interesting at the moment. Was there one thing you've worked on, a deal that you can talk about, that you either really, what was your favourite one, or one that surprised you that you were able to do? Or
there's been so many in 10 years. It's hard to pull them out. Some of them have been the larger loans. And we've done a number through Coreco. I remember, we worked on a deal for a year, as you know.
I remember that one.
And trials and tribulations, and it's obviously very difficult because of GDPR and things like that. You can't mention it individually. But we got to so many times when we thought we got to the final hurdle and something was discovered, and you go, blimey, if we'd have known that at the start, we wouldn't have gone this time. But I think you know the deal that I'm on about. It was a large commercial deal, mixed portfolio of assets down in the West Country. At the time, it was probably the biggest deal that the bank had done. Certainly, it was the biggest deal through our Interbay one. But I felt I lived and breathed that from January to the December and we all wanted to try and complete it before the end of the year. And I think that was probably one of the most interesting.
I think that's really interesting, actually, because that sort of sums it up, is the time that some of these deals can take. And actually, it's about if you get a good lender, good solicitors, good broker, everyone coming together really to try and make a deal work. It makes such a difference, doesn't it?
It was the bit when you get the offer out, you think you're over the hurdle, and then you got to get there's legal bits come out about the title. And of course, I think for the broker that was in your team that worked on it, I haven't got much black hair left, probably very few. He would have certainly gained some grey hairs over that 12 months, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But but thank you anyway for persevering. It shows what can be done. So just finally then, Adrian, I'm going to ask you something else. What is the best piece of advice that you have ever had?
Whew, there's a good one. There's a number in business. One was surround yourself with good people, and I think I've managed to do that over the last 10 years.
Like that.
And I have to say, I left quite a secure corporate background. I worked for a big lender before I came here, and it was probably from my missus, which was because it was going to a very different world, and I was really umming and ahhing. She said, believe in yourself and take the chance. So that was probably cool.
I like that age. Look at that.
Yeah. I might as well get a plug in because she was the one who pushed me into doing it. So they always have a way, don't they? So
so I think, let me check my watch. I think we're just about there.
Hey, it was fun.
It goes quick, doesn't it?
It does, definitely.
It does. But thank you, Adrian. I really appreciate
that. Thanks for the
invite. And for everyone out there who's looking at, buy-to-lets or semi-commercial, commercial, there are some really good lenders out there. There are more opportunities than you think, definitely, to get this done. So thank you for watching, or thank you for listening. Join me next time to find out who's going to be next on the Coreco Couch.